and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gay USA. I'm Ann Northrop.
Hello, and I'm Rob Shooter.
Thank you, Rob. The lovely Rob Shooter has jumped in because Andy has turned up a little under the weather today. So I quickly called Rob because who else would I call on short notice? The brilliant, glib, funny Rob Shooter has...
Awfully kind. You're awfully kind. I feel like Donna Murphy to Andy's Bette Midler, and I'm so sorry you've got me on a matinee.
So things may be a little unusual today, but we're going to go ahead and do Gay USA and hope to give you some news and some insight into all of this. We have a couple of stories that are not on our headlines list, which we're about to tell you, that we're saving for the end of the show for entertainment news. But I want to tease these because they are so delicious.
They are delicious.
Well, one of them is the marriage of Niecy Nash to a woman, totally out of the blue, to the entire world. And I couldn't be more excited because I love Niecy Nash. But we will go into that at greater length at the end. And Rob has some particular...
Awesome. Yeah, I've known her for quite a while, and nobody saw this coming. I spoke to a few of her friends. We'll save it for later on, but it surprised not only us as fans of hers, but also to her inner circle did not really know about this.
Okay, more later. But I envy you that relationship. And then the other shocker is, guess who reached out to Gay USA for a little help? The Tiger King, Joe Exotic, Joseph Maldonado.
It's a mouthful.
Joseph Maldonado Passage, of course. My apologies. The Tiger King, who, as you know, is openly gay and was the hit of the year in his Netflix series, is now in prison and looking for better understanding and help. And he wrote us a letter, and it's fascinating. So we will read you that and go into the details of his story up to date at the end of the show. So stay tuned. But here are today's headlines. Very sad to see that out gay congressional candidate Alex Morse, you know, the guy who's the young mayor of Holyoke, Mass., lost his Massachusetts primary for Congress after his veteran opponent indulged or helped an anti-gay smear campaign that was just disgusting.
This was a surprising one. I was hoping that he would be following in the footsteps of AOC and other young Democrats out there, very progressive people. I think the race was interesting to look, though, and I'm sure he has a really long and bright future. He's certainly now become a figure.
I hope.
Very well.
Well, let's just do the headlines first, and then we'll get to the details of that and other stories. There's a record settlement from New York City to the family of transgender inmate Layleen Polcano, who died on Rikers Island. And a strange story, a woman seems to have cleared HIV from her system, from her body, without the bone marrow transplant that has cured 3 men. We'll investigate the details of that. We experienced last week a truly frightening Republican National Convention. We will catch up on what happened there. When last we saw you, we were in the midst of it. And part of that is about Trump's favorite gay, Ric Grenell, who has now taken a job at an anti-LGBTQ legal group. Unbelievable. In better news, a federal court has ruled against the State Department's crusade against citizenship for the child of a gay couple So that's a good story. And of course, surprise, surprise, more young men have come forward to tell how Becky Falwell went after them sexually while her husband Jerry Jr.'s tenure is being investigated by Liberty University. And Polish Catholic bishops are now officially proposing conversion camps for LGBTQ people. How sweet of them. But let's go back and start with Alex Morse. So Alex Morse is the young mayor of Holyoke, Mass., a small city that has been a depressed city for years, and he's evidently done a good job as mayor and decided to run for Congress in the 1st District there against Richie Neal, who's been in Congress for about 30 years and had a fairly progressive record. But over the years, as he has become chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, he has become someone who has, as others in that position, become the biggest recipient of campaign funds from lobby groups that want his help, corporations. And so Morse stepped up to say, you know what, this is getting a little too corrupt and rotten. I'm challenging him. But guess what? A smear campaign developed against Morse with college students claiming that he had inappropriately been involved sexually with other college students. Well, it turned out this was a complete hoax. Glenn Greenwald of The Intercept exposed this. The Massachusetts Democratic Party turns out to have been involved. And Richie Neal, the congressman, was sort of pushing this along. In fact, he commissioned push poll calls that said, would call voters in Western Massachusetts and say, if you heard that Alex Morse had been inappropriately sexually involved with college students, would you support him for Congress? That's called a push poll.
Right.
Because it pushes voters to his opponent. And Neal said, he sort of said, no, I didn't do any of this. I didn't do anything appropriate. Well, one of his ads that implied some of this mistakenly aired up until right before the election. And so even though this hoax was exposed, and even though the Massachusetts Democrats are now investigating all of this, Alex Morse lost his primary to Richie Neal.
It's a mind-blowing story. I think the problem is with these smears campaigns is once it's out, the damage has been done. Richard Neal did very little in his power to disavow this, to walk it back. He sort of was quite Trumpian in his nod and his wink and the way that he pushed this along. He certainly didn't stand up to stop himself, although I do think the silver lining here is that Alex now has got an enormous amount of attention. He's still very young. I think he has a very bright future in the party. We should point out as well, a lot of high-powered Democrats did side with Richard Neal, including Nancy Pelosi. This is somebody that they want to keep in the party and elected. And I think recently, too, he's been criticized quite heavily for not being more aggressive about going after President Trump's taxes, which he could in his position. So I think this guy took a shot here. There was a chance, maybe an outside chance, for him to be the next AOC. It didn't happen yet, but I'm told he's going to be around for a long time now.
I think that's true. And there was also an interesting split among LGBT organizations. The Victory Fund, which supports LGBTQ candidates across the country in all sorts of races, were so stand up. They supported him all along the way. They didn't hesitate. When these smears started, they talked to him. They believed him. They supported him. They were terrific. The Human Rights Campaign, on the other hand, which has a bias to support incumbents, supported Richie Neal and never wavered from that. And I think they have a little soul searching to do about their support for Neal in the face of this really heinous
Do we know, Anne, how close the vote was? Forgive me if I'm putting you on the spot.
60% to 40%.
Right. Which seems like a large percentage.
Very.
But in these districts, the actual number of votes is surprisingly small. But like I said, I think we're going to hear a lot more of Alex, and he does have, I think, a bright future.
Well, Western Massachusetts is not heavily populated, so it doesn't surprise me that it would be small. And the fact that Alex Morse got 40% in the face of this smear, and as a young challenger to a very, very powerful congressman, the race, as you said, was a long shot in the first place. So, yeah, good.
Do you think that the actual challenge itself will pull the winner over to a more progressive side? Is this going to be a wake-up call?
I'd love to think so, but I think that's true of Joe Biden, who has been really brought up to speed on progressive talk. I call it talk at the moment because he hasn't done anything yet, but I'm hopeful with him. Richie Neal,
maybe not.
No, maybe not. All right. Well, also, so the Republican convention wound up last week and was scary to many of us, I think, because it seemed so powerfully angry and vicious that we all sort of went, whoa, whoa, whoa. Is he really going to scare people into voting for him again? Are we in trouble? Did you see any of it? Do you have anything?
I did. I think I was shocked by the stance they took, because I really think he wants to win this race. And we have to remember too, a lot of these speeches, a lot of these presentations were pre-taped. So this wasn't an accident. So Kimberly Guilford, that performance she put on, I think set the tone. I'm shocked, although maybe I shouldn't be, that is something that people watched before it was broadcast and said, you know what? That's exactly where we should be, and that's the tone we should set. So had this been a live convention under normal times, maybe the tone could have been a little off. But they knew this. They wanted this. And this is the way they think they're going to win, which is going to be very bad news for us on the other side for the next 2 months, because I think they're going to double down on this aggressive, negative, scary tone. Also, too, I was shocked how much the family, A, was involved, and B, that they went along with it. Living here in New York, you do see the Trumps, or you did see the Trumps out quite a bit. They love New York, so they have the privilege and the wealth before this to use New York as a playground before he was elected. So 4 years ago, I bumped into Ivanka and Jared at Nobu, a fancy restaurant here in New York. They like New York. They were out all the time. If I was the family, I would be concerned about, if Daddy doesn't win, what happens to me? And I would have thought they would have tried to make some bridges during this convention, but they clearly didn't. Quite surprising to me too, Anne. I wonder what you think about this. Is Tiffany Trump, who has been blasted on social media for a very aggressive speech defending her father, which I understand defending your dad, but particularly she went after Joe Biden. What are they thinking?
Well, they are, I think one key is what you said about they want to win this race. 4 years ago, they were not so eager to win the race. They thought they would lose. They thought they would make money out of it. It would increase his visibility. It would get him a lot more business. And so no one really was more shocked at their win than they were. Mm-hmm. And, you know, what was the story? Melania was crying about it because they won. Well, now they've really crossed the line. They've gone over to the dark side full bore, and they really want this power to continue. They see themselves, they have totally bought into themselves as power brokers, and they don't want the ride to end. Right.
And the family has, I'm reading Stephanie Winston's book at the moment. She went to work for the First Lady, and then she claims she got through under the buzz about the financing of the inauguration. So she's produced a tell-all book, and I've known her for quite a while. In the book, she claims that there is no distinction between the wife and the children and the man, that they're all in this together. And anybody, including Stephanie, who thought Melania was different, the children were different. I think now we can say that is not the case. This is a family business. There's some delicious parts in the book too, where she talks about Ivanka wanting to turn the First Lady's office into the First Family office. That from day one, this was going to be a family affair. And we saw that just a couple of days ago at the convention. I'm not sure if they're in denial. Maybe I'm being too optimistic looking at the polls. But if I was in that family, I'd think about what are we going to do next? This doesn't look good. But clearly they don't think like that.
Well, I think we have to be careful about ourselves not being in denial. And as I continue to hear people on the progressive side condemn Trump and his administration for being not normal or violating rules or standards, I think, my God, haven't we learned anything in 4 years? This is exactly what we were saying 4 years ago. It got us nowhere. We were blind to what the country wanted. And we have really got to stay awake and realize that there is even with the polls saying what they say now, there is a substantial part of this country that supports him, wants what he wants, loves what he's saying, and is not going to be convinced that that's wrong. And historically, the polls have undercounted right-wing votes. And even though Hillary did win the election with 3 million more votes, they were very lucky or clever or we were stupid or whatever about the Electoral College. And we just cannot sit here and say, well, Biden is winning, we're fine. How can people not understand that we are right and they are wrong? Well, wake up. They think they're right.
Yeah, it happened once before. Hopefully it won't happen again. But they're doubling down on this. That convention was fascinating to me, particularly because most of it was pre-taped. This is the look. This is the agenda, if there is one, that they're going to put forward. This is their winning strategy. And they could be right. They could be right.
Well, 4 years ago, I knew, or 5 years ago when he first announced, it was clear to me immediately, because I watched The Apprentice, that he was going to win. I'm not so sure of that this time, but I feel confused about what's going to happen.
Talking of Apprentice quickly, I believe it was some producers from The Apprentice who produced the Republican National Convention. Trump brought in some of his old TV people.
The old Mark Burnett team, yeah.
Yes.
All right, well, we can't talk about this forever. We do have limited time. But just to pick out one emblematic thing from the convention, Ric Grenell, out gay man, conservative, who Trump sent to Germany as ambassador, then brought back for 2 months as director of national intelligence, and then got rid of him and put him in charge of LGBTQ outreach for the Republican Party, going from director of national intelligence to outreach for the Republican Party to gay people. Not your usual route. Well, Rick, first of all, spoke at the convention, totally pink-washed Trump. He's a great guy. He loves everybody. Never said gay, never referred to himself as gay, but his statements have been that Trump's the greatest president ever for gay people. We call that pinkwashing because it says, here's a guy who's going to exonerate Trump from all his horrible stuff for LGBTQ people by saying, I'm gay and I love him, so why can't you? Well, he has now taken a job with the American Center for Law and Justice. Who started the American Center for Law and Justice? Pat Robertson. Who runs the American Center for Law and Justice? Jay Sekulow and his son. He's been hired as special advisor for national security and foreign policy. And what does the American Center for Law and Justice do? They work around the world with countries that want to criminalize homosexuality and impose the death penalty. This from the man who claimed he was leading a worldwide effort to decriminalize homosexuality. Ric Grenell.
Ric Grenell. They're not making any secrets about this either. Some people join organizations and figure it out a little too late. This is right up front. I looked up their mission statement this morning before the show, and it's, quote, universal, God-given, and to protect inalienable rights, not gay rights. Also, too, Anne, which I thought was fascinating, in the press release that they sent out to announce Ric coming on part, they failed to mention the fact that he is a gay man who is married to a man. That is not in his bio.
No, but what a guy. Now, we told you last week that one of the people who spoke at the convention and spoke against trans people was a Billy Graham granddaughter, Sissy. But good news, another Billy Graham granddaughter, Jerusha Duford, wrote an op-ed in USA Today attacking Trump and saying he disgraces evangelicals. So there's at least a little split in the Billy Graham family. Franklin Graham, of course, son of Billy Graham, opened the convention one night with a prayer. Thanks, Frank.
There does appear to be a little crack. We shouldn't overestimate it. We shouldn't get too excited about it. But it does appear like there is a little movement, should we say. Maybe nothing to scream about yet.
All right. Now, to go away from politics for a minute, or slightly still involved, here in New York City, we have told you over the last couple of years about Layleen Polcano, a trans woman who died in the Rikers Island jail. She was put there for very small offenses. She couldn't make the $500 bail that she was required to pay. So she was stuck there, and she had a history of epilepsy and other medical problems, and they just let her die one night in the jail. The guards were supposed to check on her. They didn't. They ridiculed her when she was in there. They put her in the wrong place. And it became a huge scandal in New York. And now the city, the family sued the city for all of this. And the city has now agreed to the largest payment ever for a case like this, $5.9 million to the family. The family accepted this reluctantly because what they really want is systems change. They want the correction officers fired. They want systems at the jail changed. The Bronx district attorney refused to prosecute these corrections officers, which is just shameful. But at least there is this settlement now.
It was a settlement that they really thought about it. They said in a statement that it was a difficult decision, and they're not going away. This is just the beginning of their search for justice, is what the family is saying. They're going to keep fighting. I believe too she was held in solitary confinement for a long period of time. And we should point out too that there's been nothing done towards the guards. They are still there. Nobody has been investigated or arrested. So hopefully, I think the family is fired up to keep this going forward, and certainly to make sure this is a name we don't forget.
And tragically, another trans woman has been found dead in New York City on the beach at Orchard Beach in the Bronx. We are just getting details. We're not announcing a name because there's some dispute over her real name. Now she's been misgendered and misnamed, so we'll follow up with more details next week. But that is a tragic story. In better news out of California, where the legislature has passed 3 bills that are going to be very helpful, and Gavin Newsom, the governor, is expected to sign them. California keeps finding new ways to help us and improve laws. One allows trans people in prison to be housed wherever they want that is comfortable for them. Another mandates that LGBTQ people can be counted, their data can be supplied voluntarily in relation to reportable diseases like COVID, so we can get a better handle on the impact of diseases on LGBTQ people who are often overlooked in the medical system. And another one equalizes the youth sex law. If you're straight in California and you're an 18-year-old having sex with a 17-year-old, which is illegal because sex with a minor, even though you're boyfriend and girlfriend and only a year apart, the judge has the discretion to decide what punishment you face. But if you are two people of the same sex, say two young men at 18 and 17, and you are caught performing oral or anal sex, you are mandatorily placed on the sex offender list. So this new law will get rid of that and give the judge authority to make decisions that are appropriate for the case across the board, no matter what your sexual orientation. That's
and they seem pretty logical, pretty easy decisions to make. Yet the fight to make this happen was certainly very fierce. And now, hopefully, these laws will be adopted too by other states.
Right. In Anchorage, Alaska, the assembly has banned conversion therapy for minors by medical professionals, not the religious conversion therapy. That's the next level we have to get to, but it's certainly a step forward. Chasten Buttigieg has a new book out, I Have Something to Tell You, about the campaign with his husband, Pete. Do you have any familiarity with this? Or I've seen it a couple of
I started to read it. It's terrific. It's a real biography. There's a really emotional chapter I'm reading at the moment where he tells his mom, his family, that he's gay, and their first thought was that he was sick. I assume they thought that he was HIV positive, which he is not. And he talked about that kiss when the two of them were on the stage together and kissed, which he got criticism. They got criticism from actually both sides, one much more than the other. But he talked about that moment, saying that at the time he didn't realize what a big moment it was. He loves his husband. He's very proud of what his husband was doing. And it just felt very natural to kiss him. And I think the two of them were a bit surprised by this. Also, too, I think today it's just been announced that Pete is not going anywhere. He's just started a new podcast, which I think is a daily podcast on Lighthearted Media, so you can check out now, Pete, once a week.
And we had a guest a few weeks ago, Adafe Akporo, a Nigerian gay refugee who was absolutely captivating, and we got a very large audience response to his appearance. He couldn't have been more charming, and he runs a shelter for refugees here in the city, and he's got a new book out, Compassion is Worth More, Using Your Civil Power to Create Change. That's coming out officially on October 7th. And he was so popular here that I just wanted to let people know they can get more of him.
It's a great title, Anne. It's a great title.
It is. All right. Good news from a federal court in Georgia, which has overruled our State Department. If only that could happen more. The State Department had refused to acknowledge the citizenship of a girl born by surrogate to a gay male couple here because they didn't want to acknowledge the marriage of the men, and it was all technical, but they just said, forget it, you're not getting it. If you were a straight couple, you'd get it, but not if you're a gay couple. Well, the court has overruled the State Department and said, of course she's your daughter. Of course she's a U.S. citizen because you are her parents. And that is amazing and wonderful.
I'm amazed too. As somebody who's not a natural born American who had to go through the process of getting a green card and citizenship here, I can tell you it is no joke, and it is very expensive, and it's heartbreaking, and you don't really get an appeal. It's their decision. So for this couple to fight and hopefully change that for other families is a wonderful, wonderful thing. It was very nerve-wracking.
What this country does to refugees and asylum seekers and just immigrants, unbelievably horrible.
And there's no compassion to it. I remember going down to take my exam to become a citizen, and you're given the questions before and the answers, but there's hundreds of them, and you get asked 4 out of this book of several hundred, and there's no compassion there. You were put in a room. It's a random 4 questions in English. No, and it's a tough process. It's not a kind way to welcome anybody here.
No. Well, thank God you passed. In other political news, we had Danica Rome, the trans woman who was elected to the Virginia state legislature and reelected in 2018, put out a statement in support of Joe Biden, and we have a picture of them together. And it was very sweet because she talked about how he had consistently supported her early on and all throughout when others weren't so quick to step up. And he was just open-hearted and completely supportive, and it was just a very nice statement.
There's a side of Joe, and I don't think we did this, or people did not do this to as much effect with Hillary, who also, too, apparently is very charming and warm and different from what we got to see on camera. But I know a couple of people who have had interactions with Joe, like this young boy at the convention that had the stutter, that was simply heartbreaking in a good way. I know a few people that have been around Joe, and he does give out his phone number. This is the guy that he is. It's really impressive that somebody like that can pay that much attention to you.
If only given it to Anita Hill. That's the thing I'll never forgive him for, but we move on. Also in Virginia, more on the Falwells, a second pool boy has stepped up who says he was, Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife Becky enlisted him in some business venture when they met him at a pool when he was 20. And then it turns out that there's more about Becky and a trainer. Becky seems to have some record of a whole string of sexual involvements, and the whole thing has just become too much for Liberty University. They're totally out, and now the university is investigating all their records, their financial records with the university, to see if they misspent funds on all of these escapades.
Michael Cohen had been hinting at this for a long time. Michael Cohen allegedly did.
He was involved.
He was involved with it. And Tom Arnold, for some strange reason, is now involved too, who claims there's a naked photograph of Jerry Falwell that is floating around too. I don't know if it's true.
Paris. Luckily, we aren't. We're now.
And also, too, I thought was very interesting is the pool boy was on GMA this week. I'm told the ratings were through the roof. So this story's going to stay. If people are watching, they don't move on.
Oh, I'm so happy. And in Texas, in a place called Colleyville, Texas, the Covenant Christian Academy has expelled a gay student, Devin Bryant, just as he was entering his senior year at the school, after having been there his entire school life, starting in pre-kindergarten. Why? Because he came out on Facebook, I think, last October. The school leader, he's a straight A student. His classmates describe him as a totally nice guy. Everybody loves him. The head of the school says, in expelling him, I did what Jesus would have wanted me to do. I don't think so.
It's a terrible message too. Anybody that is at that school that is gay, I think this is telling them to just shut up.
Well, that's the point. Intimidate others, because you would think, one more year, he's a great kid, he's got great grades, why not let him just finish off? No, the message is don't anybody else come out. We are not allowing any of you here. So he's gone to the local public school and he's doing fine there, but really this is just shameful. And a similar but slightly better story in Roma, Texas. A teacher there named Taylor Lifka, 25 years old, young woman, also extremely popular as a teacher. Well, she was condemned and suspended for posting things in her classroom that said Black Lives Matter, pro-LGBTQ, feminist stuff, posters. Suspended for this, but there was such a hue and cry that she has been reinstated.
Yes. Did the posters come down, though? I wonder if that was part of the deal.
Very interesting question to which I do not know the answer. I have failed in my job.
No. We'll get it next week. That's the good thing. We're always back.
Yes, follow up.
Yes.
it seems to be monuments to Marsha P. Johnson year. Elizabeth, New Jersey, her hometown, is going to create a monument to her. Soon you'll be able to travel the entire Northeast visiting monuments to Marsha.
What do you think changed that? This is not a new story, but suddenly it seems...
And it's been distorted some too. But Stonewall 50, and the world has changed, and people are more willing to acknowledge heroes. And what I loved about her and Sylvia, I knew Sylvia, I didn't know Marsha, was that they started this house, this apartment for young LGBTQ runaways under the aegis of STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, in the early 70s. And that was visionary and so generous and philanthropic. And it didn't last terribly long, but it was a great thing to do. And I would be happy to build monuments everywhere to them for doing that. That was terrific. And also we honor the late Dr. Robert Campbell, who just died at the age of 94. He helped change the American Psychiatric Association definition of homosexuality, demedicalizing it, as it were. So he is an extremely prominent psychiatrist, or was, and respected by everybody. And he just did a great job of changing that. And all of that is also shown and talked about in this new documentary that is played at the Los Angeles Outfest Festival called Cured. I told you about that a few weeks ago when it was about to play there. Well, Outfest is now making movies that played there available for 24 hours only, and Cured is Thursday. Tomorrow, as we are live on Facebook, 24 hours. If you might still be able to catch it if you're catching this show Thursday night.
Have you seen it, Anne?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Cured. But it's going to play on PBS next year. So if you miss it now, Cured on PBS. It's on the Outfest Now app this week for 24 hours. Also, condolences to Matt Foreman and Frank DeLeon, his partner. They were walking down the street in Chelsea, and a couple of guys passed them without a mask. They turned to them and said, "Wear a mask." And boom, Frank got hit in the back of the head, the face, ended up in the hospital with a concussion, bleeding all over. He's okay now. The staples have been removed from his head. But watch out who you say that stuff to. All right. I want to make sure we leave time for the big stuff at the end, so I'm going to whip through some international news. In Poland, the Catholic bishops' hierarchy has officially endorsed conversion therapy clinics so that gay people, quote, can regain their natural sexual orientation. Thanks. Thank you for your expertise, Polish Catholic bishops. But meanwhile, in Australia, the Capital Territory, which is one of their sections, has banned all conversion therapy and criminalized it, whether by medical practitioners or religious people. They will now punish people with fines or jail if they try to practice conversion therapy on LGBTQ people. This is amazing, and not that I want a lot of people to go to jail, but to really outlaw it is fantastic. And the Attorney General of the Capital Territory spoke very movingly. He is a Christian minister, but he says, I have counseled victims of conversion therapy, and it is horrifying what they do to people, and I support this criminalization. We talked about how Queensland had outlawed conversion therapy, but not gone nearly this far. This is a real impactful law from the Capital Territory.
And maybe a good backlash and to what's going on down there. They've had some very right-wing candidates win recently, and I think it horrified people in Australia and certainly made them speak up. So maybe this is a good thing that came out of that.
That is a dynamic that we see across the board over the last few decades, that some of our progress comes when we have been most severely attacked, because it makes clear how awful those attacks are. They're not subtle, and it provokes people to say, wait a minute, that's not right, and has, I think, propelled us forward. And speaking of being, one of the people who propelled us forward was Cesar Sigliudi. I may be butchering that name. He was the president of the Argentine homosexual community in Argentina, a great activist, beloved, and he has just died of a heart attack at age 63, a very tragic loss in Argentina. He and his partner were the first to have a legal civil union as a same-sex couple in Argentina, and provoked a movement to make that legal. And in the UK, just as a light note, a company called Avanti West Coast, a railroad company, has created the Pride train. Have you seen this?
I have. My mummy called me to tell me all about it. It's apparently all over the news, and they're terribly excited, and they're trying to get their rainbow Union Jacks ordered so they can wave them as the train passes. They're very, very excited about it.
Well, it's beautiful. They've encased the whole train with a rainbow motif, and it's really quite gorgeous. So
last time I was there, I got to admit, I forgot how lovely train travel can be.
Oh my God, yes.
Awful it is here. Like Penn Station. I mean, it just is so glorious. And they bring you a cup of tea, and you sit there, you watch the world whiz by, and now you can do it on a Pride train. It's really lovely.
And I hear Amtrak is very empty these days. So if you want to go somewhere in the Northeast Corridor, or presumably in other parts of the country, train travel may be more comfortable than plane travel. And in Valencia, Spain, a lesbian penguin couple has fostered the birth of an egg, a new penguin. Electra and Viola are proud parents.
Proud parents.
Yeah.
Out of this too. Like, I think it does the facility where they are a great deal of business. It seems there's something to be quite proud of. Here in America, I'm not quite sure that would happen, but I was told the people there were very thrilled when this happened, and now hopefully people will come and see it.
Well, there have been same-sex penguin couples around the world, several of them, who have been parents, who have been given eggs to foster. But Spain at the moment is where they're excited about.
Very excited.
And we are possibly excited about a study published or reported in the New York Times, actually a University of California, San Francisco study that got published in the magazine Nature about, as the Times says, a woman may have been cured of HIV without medical treatment. Now, that may be an exaggeration, but the 3 cases we know of where men have been supposedly cured or their HIV has been eradicated have been guys who had bone marrow transplants and who were given new bone marrow that had blood that was impervious to HIV. I'm butchering that. And they're the only cases we had on record. What we've known is that a lot of people, maybe most people these days, can suppress the virus with drugs that they continue to take long term, and that keeps the virus so low that you can no longer infect other people, and your health is pretty good aside from any side effects.
The medical community are terribly excited by this, and I think particularly as the world is looking for a COVID vaccination, there was fear that HIV and AIDS would maybe be forgotten about for a little bit. And breakthroughs like this, I think, are so important, Anne, because it keeps it back in the news, and we remember that there's many, many, many different things we're fighting all at the same time.
So what they found was that this woman had been taking drugs, and then she stopped, and they can no longer find the virus anywhere in her yet. So the feeling is that she has somehow eradicated the virus. Now, they're also studying long-term non-progressors, people who've had the virus for a long time, have not progressed to any illness and seem to control the virus without being on drugs. And to me, the really exciting news here is we're discovering all this because of an advance in genetics. And we can look more deeply into the body in looking for the virus. And what we have found in the past is that the virus was controlled, but people would go off the drugs, and then the virus would reappear and start reproducing again, and people could be in trouble. When people have taken treatment interruptions before, there have been more deaths, they've gotten more opportunistic infections, they develop drug resistance, and they can transmit the virus. But we are now able to find cases where the drug on its own stays dormant and is so controlled and so deep that it is not replicating. And we do not have all the answers yet, but this is very, very promising to be able to look deeper into the body.
Extraordinary.
So again, we're getting short, so I'm just going to say quickly that Truvada as PrEP is going generic. So now some insurance companies don't want to pay for the slightly better replacement drug, Descovy, also used as PrEP, because Truvada generic will be cheaper. So people are being forced to use Truvada instead of Descovy, and this may or may not be acceptable. Fight continues. And in Iowa, a young man, Noah May, 18 years old, has been charged with criminal transmission of HIV. He had unprotected intercourse with a woman, after a few times told her he had HIV, and he told the cops. But rather than giving him credit for any of that, and with no notice of whether or not he actually transmitted it to her, they are prosecuting him. She wants him prosecuted. She got a no contact order. The criminalization of HIV is another shameful situation in this country.
Shameful.
All right. Entertainment news, finally. Let me get past a couple of quick things. Chadwick Boseman. I watched 42 the other night, which was on the Jackie Robinson thing he did. What a guy to know he had a fatal disease and make a deliberate decision that he was going to play characters who would be role models. Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, James Brown, maybe not such a role model, but an important story, and certainly Black Panther.
It's extraordinary. The entertainment community that I've been speaking to, nobody knew. He really did keep this a secret. Directors he worked with, cast members he worked with, didn't have a clue. And now they've started the process. It's very early on Black Panther 2. My sources are telling me, Anne, that this character is going to be written out of the script. They don't want to replace him. They think that's disrespectful. I'm not sure other actors would want to take on this role.
Exactly.
And a life well lived, an extraordinary man.
Beautiful guy, and visited kids with cancer in the hospital to give them hope and give them a role model. And
a nice little note too. Denzel Washington paid for him to go to drama school. Denzel Washington picked up the tab so that he could go and study. Amazing.
Okay. Coming late this year, Ammonite, a movie with Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan, having an affair, 19th century. Kate Winslet plays a real-life paleontologist. But the Saoirse Ronan character is invented. And there's no evidence that the Kate Winslet real-life character was actually a lesbian. So it's weird. We'll keep an eye on that.
There's so many great stories to tell, Anne, that have never been told.
Exactly, and then they make them up.
Stories, we exist.
Just tell us the truth. Well, also telling the truth, maybe, a new book called All the Sonnets of Shakespeare from Cambridge University by a couple of scholars says that Shakespeare looking at his sonnets, undeniably bisexual. Well, we knew he'd written all these sonnets to boys, so I guess so.
The clues were there, I think. The clues were there.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tiger King. I have that on my list first. So out of the blue, a week or two ago, we get a note. Joe Exotic, Joseph Maldonado Passage, wants to be in touch with Gay USA, so they will read a statement from him about his experience as a gay man, wrongfully convicted and in prison. And we're thinking, what does...
Can I ask, were you talking about him? How did this come up? He clearly watches the show.
We have certainly talked about him in the past when the show this spring became one of the biggest hits ever on television, on Netflix. And as an out gay man who, you talk about how the world has changed and how things are acceptable. Joe becomes this big hit as an out gay man on this show. But no, we were approached by a representative of his, and I said, what is going on here? Does he watch the show? Is he aware of us? And she said, look, I have been searching for an outlet for him to make this statement, and he wants to reach out to the LGBTQ community. And so you came up, and here we are, and we'd like to give you a statement from him and have you convey it to the community. And the story is that he is, he's in prison now. He's been sentenced to 22 years for killing some tigers, which he said he was euthanizing at the direction of the government, and for maybe hiring a hitman to kill his beau, Carol Baskin.
There's that part too, Anne. There's that part too.
He disputes that. But at any rate, she's still alive and well and about to appear on Dancing with the Stars.
That's today. The costumes alone.
Oh my God! Yes, I'm sure they'll all have animal prints. She, of course, has been accused of killing her husband, who disappeared and is yet to turn up. So here are some notes from Joe to the LGBT community through Gay USA. For one thing, I was sexually assaulted by a guard in Grady County, Oklahoma jail. Beat up and stripped naked, tied in a chair so long the skin came off my arms. That's the pictures you saw. I assume Rich is showing the picture of the injuries. And then locked in a room naked for 8 days, sleeping on a cold metal shelf on the floor with dried feces and sperm on it from so many others before me. There is no mental help. It's just abuse. Let me get to his actual statement. I thank people all over the world for their love and support. Just the letters that come to me daily from people show that being accepted in today's world for being gay is much easier than ever before. But this is in regards to the people of the world. We still have a huge problem within our system of being accepted. I had made complaints to the county sheriff's office. I'm sorry, I'm reading this off my screen. If I had it in front of me, I could have underlined parts.
It's not an empty statement, Anne. So it
is. And a lot of it is details about Jeff Lowe having turned him into the cops and setting him up for prosecution when he doesn't feel he did anything wrong. Federal agent Matthew Bryant and his confidential informant both exchanged messages with Jeff Lowe during the time they were setting me up, that they wanted the queer in prison, and these messages were all produced by the Assistant U.S. Attorney's Office's discovery material, but kept away from the jury. I'm the only person to ever be criminally charged with this crime of shooting the tigers, as other zoo officials are all being civilly sued for the same violation, only because I was outspoken and openly gay. They got what they wanted, the queer in prison. The system is broken, and the riots and protests on the streets will never change anything until we get people united and understand it's the corruption within the system as prosecutors, detectives, and federal agents and judges that cover the corruption and make up the laws they see fit as they go, so they can move up the political ladder by having a good conviction rate, even if it takes putting an innocent person in prison. He is appealing his conviction, and he is asking Trump for a pardon. His representatives have delivered a pardon request to Trump. And so we'll see where that goes. But he is reaching out for help. He's got a lot of volunteer help, both in lawyers and in people like the person who contacted us who are working his social media and stuff. He's really very angry and unhappy in prison and thinks he has been railroaded. They're making a TV series out of this, and Kate McKinnon is going to play Carol Baskin. We will continue to follow this and let you know if we get any more.
Anne, you're our own community's Mary Hart. Right?
We don't have time for that. Let's go to Niecy Nash. Niecy Nash married Jessica Betts, a singer. Niecy Nash had been married.
We should keep going. So Niecy Nash, who was married to a man until quite recently, has now shocked everybody by announcing she is remarried, this time to a woman. She's very happy. They put out a photograph together. They looked just beautiful. I spoke to a few friends of Niecy's, and they were totally shocked by this too. They had no idea it was coming. It was a secret that she had kept for obviously some time. I'm told, though, she is happier than she has ever been, and she's put out a statement saying that. And hey, we wish the couple nothing but the best. I've met her a few times. She's terribly charming. The Niecy that you see on TV and I fell in love with is certainly who she really is in real life. So Gay USA, we're sending you our best. We didn't get an invite to the wedding, but we are really, really excited for you and your new wife. And
30 seconds, Rob, 30 seconds.
We've wrapped up the show, so we lost Anne. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being so kind to me. Andy, get well soon, my friend. It's not quite the same without you, as I said. I'm the Donna Murphy to your Bette Midler. Thank you for watching, and we shall see you on next week's show.
I got back. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Andy will be better. Thank you, Rich. Sorry, I lost my internet.
About Niecy Nash, we lost you.
I know. I hope you told them about Niecy.
We did. It's very exciting.
See you all next week. Thank you.